If you've been paying attention to a lot of legislative action that's currently going on in the country, then there is the ICT Authority Bill of 2024. And it's not a bill that's being floated for the very first time. It's been here for a while. It's coming back. Parliament has now given Kenyans an opportunity to submit their reviews on the same bill. And basically it aims to regulate the tech sector. And that's why it's making fodder for us this week on our conversation on TECHOVER. Welcome to NTV's and Africa's biggest tech conversation, TECHOVER. My name is Brian Jojotino. I am NTV's in-house techie. We have just the man for it, Victor Ndede, advocate of the High Court of Kenya, and also a techie and a data manager at Amnesty International will be talking to us about this. But first off, as we always do it, the tech news of the week. This week, we shed light on TikTok's changing algorithm placements on your TikTok feed. So TikTok will henceforth not randomly bring you any content on your feed except that which you signed up for when creating the account. While this phenomenon was largely disputed previously by regulators and a select number of users, it worked to catapult small accounts with fewer numbers that blew to astronomical figures following random placements to different accounts and geographical locations globally. TikTok's algorithm prioritizes engagement, video information and settings for your account and device. And while we don't know the full extent of how the TikTok algorithm works, like most social media companies, the bulk of its programming is proprietary and only some details are shared publicly. TikTok's algorithm is a system that decides what content will be displayed on each user's For You page, which is basically a recommendation system for each user. In other words, TikTok's algorithm has been lauded for its accuracy with the impressive and sometimes unsettling personalization it offers every TikTok account. It's why you may see an abundance of cat videos, while your roommate frequently sees recipe ideas and your sister gets all of the true crime breakdown. There are three main elements that drive content placement and numbers on TikTok account. First is engagement, which basically encompasses the way viewers respond to and interact with content. User interactions include positive feedback, such as following a creator or liking, sharing, rewatching, or commenting on a video. They also include negative feedback, such as marking videos as not interested or hiding a user. Secondly, there is video information. This includes captions, hashtags, effects, sounds, and trending topics. In your recommendations, you may see familiar keywords and audiovisual elements similar to content you've viewed. Lastly is the device and account settings. The type of device you use to watch videos, your language preferences, location, categories of interests you chose when you made your account, and other settings also factor into the TikTok algorithm. The algorithm processes these ranking signals and likely many others and assigns them a weight. For example, the length of time a user watches a video has more impact on the algorithm than where a video originated geographically. The content is then assessed on the chance that a specific user will be interested in it. If the computations check out, it will queue up on that user's TikTok For You page. Although a video is likely to receive more views if posted by an account with a large number of followers, follower count is not used as a basis for recommendation on TikTok. FYP stands for For You page. TikTok's For You page is filled with content that the app thinks you want to see. The algorithm will display videos it determines are most likely to entice you on your FYP. As a living computation, TikTok's algorithm will adapt with your changing interests. If you stop interacting with a creator you used to watch repeatedly, the algorithm will stop showing you or displaying their content. Or if you search a new hashtag, it may start feeding you new content that uses that tag. You can use tricks like this to customize the content the TikTok algorithm shares with you. However, it's not easy to make sure that your content reaches other viewers. And that's our tech news of the week. Very well then, now you're up to speed with what's been happening in the tech world. Time now to introduce our guest and so that we can make sense of all of this that we're talking about. Victor, good to see you. This is not the first time we are seeing this bill coming up. It's being introduced again, but there's a chronology, and it's morphed, given different names. Please walk us through that journey and how we got to this point.
Yeah, thanks very much, Brian George. Yeah, as you put it, history is very important, and for us to understand where this bill is coming from and what has happened in the last couple of years. The first time we saw this quite clearly was in 2016 when a bill was introduced by the then majority leader with the interest of regulating ICT practitioners, and it took the name of the ICT Practitioners Bill, which was a wide-sweeping and very vague bill that had a lot of requirements for registration of ICT practitioners. It had issues to do with payment of licensing fees. It had jail times and fines for non-compliance.
What?
But most interesting, it required ICT practitioners to have a university degree for them to practice any ICT discipline in this country. In 2018, we saw another draft of that bill. It came up.
What was the name then?
It still took the ICT Practitioners Bill.
Yeah.
But what happened in that bill and the 2020 bill, because there are now two other bills in between. So 2018 and 2020, we had two other bills. Where, of course, there were good attempts to reintroduce the bill. And one of the things that we saw them drop was the degree requirements. Some conversations around jail times and fines were also blocked. But at this time, this bill passed quietly.
Yeah.
So the current iteration of the bill really is a bill that has been put out by the Ministry of ICT. So it's still not at Parliament yet. It's been put out by the Minister, Cabinet Secretary for ICT, and it's now currently they're seeking public comments before the bill is actually now moved to Parliament. And so what we are seeing here is just the same language that was there in the three bills that sort of got rejected, and now it has come up again.
Don't you think it would introduce an element of overlapping of laws? Because if the 2021 was not assented to, and so that's pending, perhaps it could rise in the future, and then now we have this one. What would that mean in terms of legal basis?
No, I mean, the previous bill automatically lapsed at the close of the last Parliament. So this is a fresh bill. There's no conflict between the two laws. This is a fresh law that has been submitted by the Cabinet Secretary, and it will, of course, go to Parliament if they agree to publish that bill as a bill in Parliament. And then once assented to, if it gets assent, it will just be a new law on its own. But the others are not in conflict with it at all.
Great. We'll come to what it means. But to the benefit of the viewer, this is what the bill proposes. So accreditation and licensing, the bill introduces a licensing regime for ICT operators requiring individuals and organizations to obtain accreditation based on their experience, skills, and technical qualifications. The relevant authority will assign different categories of accreditation based on these criteria, and accreditation must be renewed annually. I'm going to talk to you about that and what it means for self-taught techies, because again, it still sort of mirrors what was being introduced in the first one in 2016 of you have to go to university. But now we have the University of YouTube. There are people learning by themselves. What does that portend for the person who is self-taught in tech skills?
Yeah, so this bill in terms of accreditation, it actually is a very vague term that has been used. They've just said that the ICT Authority will determine the minimum requirements for accreditation and licensing. You know better the previous devils in the other bills where you had been told you need a degree. Here they've just said it's a minimum requirement that will be prescribed by the authority. So as is, we don't know what that minimum would be, and maybe it's just a way that because the degree issue brought a lot of heat in the previous bills, they have it vague in this bill, and then once the bill is passed, the authority actually makes it mandatory that you have a degree to practice ICT. And so accreditation would definitely become a challenge for many self-taught, those who teach themselves online, and some people call it YouTube University, who have taught themselves on most of these things. And so if they can't be accredited, or if they'll not meet the threshold for accreditation, then of course the penalty provisions in this law would apply to them because they cannot practice ICT legally.
And I want us to talk about service delivery and finally the economic impact. So in service delivery and security, it is aimed at improving service delivery and security within the ICT sector. The bill sets out the framework to enhance efficiency and integrate ICT into the public services effectively. Kenya unveils, of course, that regulation. You work in the security sector a lot in terms of data rights and data privacy. Talk to us about your sense around that particular clause.
I think one of the things that we need to look at when we talk about revocation of licensing and even the public sector angle that the bill is trying to take is we need to see it from what mischief is this law trying to cure? You know, at times you have to look at it from that lens.
For sure.
Why are you bringing this law?
Yeah.
And you see, proponents of the bill have argued that there is need for regulation and there is need for professionalism in the ICT sector. And this has been the language since 2016 when we first saw the first iteration of this law. And there's also been the argument that quacks roam the ICT space.
Yes.
You know, ICT and the tech space is not like medicine or engineering where you really want someone to have a very professional training to develop, to do something.
Yeah.
You know, like you tell
surgery.
someone to build a software, you need a degree.
Yeah.
And yet maybe they don't need that degree.
And kids are doing that now.
Yeah, kids are doing that. We are teaching kids coding at I think CBC, and we've seen all those things. So would you say that for these kids to build software, even for their own classwork, they need accreditation from the ICT Authority? Would we need the university students building software for their learning need accreditation from the ICT Authority? You see, some of these things just create a lot of ground for expensive compliance, but also push people towards non-compliance and flouting of laws.
Yeah.
I'm not sure there's any country in this world, I've tried looking, that has a law that requires ICT practitioners to be registered, and you can actually go on a database and say, these are the registered ICT practitioners.
Yes.
And in any case, we have not seen any evidence that registering practitioners necessarily, ICT practitioners necessarily leads to professionalism.
Yeah.
So we need to understand it from that lens. And that is the main thing that this law is trying to do, is actually keep that space, in my view. So that we are able to regulate the number of ICT practitioners in the space, so that either opportunities are shared between an elite few to the exclusion of the majority.
The majority, yeah.
And what I would like to say on that point specifically is that gatekeeping has very adverse effects on a budding tech sector like Kenya's. You know, we keep saying that we are the Silicon Savannah, we have attracted tech startups, and not just tech startups, but also big technology companies here, and largely because of how the ICT space is budding, it's growing.
Vibrant.
And so now we have to ask ourselves, is this law facilitating the Kenya's Silicon Savannah journey?
Or inhibiting?
Or inhibiting, that's the question.
Very, very interesting. As you said earlier on in our conversations off record, is that anyone can go and read the proposals of the bill, but what does it mean from where you sit as a policy expert, as somebody who is actively regulating the tech sector?
I mean, the thing that we see here is, on one side, Kenya's ICT blueprints and Vision 2030 all talk about expanding our ICT sector space. There's a lot of talk from the current administration on creating digital jobs for young people. And yet we have a law that will actually come and curtail all that. So you tell these young people that you can engage in the tech space on one side, but then on the other side you tell them you'll actually have to pay an accreditation fee, you'll have to pay a license fee, and it's annual again. And you can imagine what that cost means to a bulk of our ICT practitioners, actually young people, self-taught. Most of us did not attend IT schools, but we find ourselves in the IT space.
Exactly.
Guys are learning coding, guys are in software development.
There are a lot of open source material.
Yeah, the open source stuff. And so that regulation, or this regulation, should it pass in its current form, and knowing how mischief can be played with a lot of this legislation, it spells doom to the young people of this country, in the sense that you will not be able to engage in the ICT space without a very overbearing regulatory oversight that, in my view, is not really necessary at this point in time. Where you talk about criminals operating in the digital space, I mean, there's already a law that looks at that, and though we have issues with it, but the Computer Misuse and Cybercrimes Act talks about a lot of the offenses on the tech space.
Yeah.
So why are we trying to over-regulate a young, budding sector that has a lot of promise for this country?
Speaking of overregulation, we have the Data Protection Act of 2019. How does it tie closely to this proposal that, the proposal that talks about security of data and the like?
We have a quite significantly robust data protection law, in my view. And it has provisions for security of data.
Yeah.
It places a requirement on many of these people to already register as data controllers and data processors in the Data Protection Act. And before they do that, they meet some certain requirements. They are required to do certain things within the Data Protection Act that actually talks about security of data and data protection in general. Before you register as a data controller or a processor, you submit to the data commissioner what are your technical and organizational measures to protect data. So it is not clear to me why most people would be put through a double registration mechanism where I've registered with the data commissioner guaranteeing that data is kept safe. I'm also required to register as an ICT practitioner. Who knows what tomorrow people will wake up and tell us to register to be or to do, you know? Yeah.
Great. As we bring this to a close, Victor, there's of course the call by government to submit public participation and of course sentiment of the same. How do you see this panning out? Are you possibly going to see another episode of rejecting the ICT
bill? As always, we say that Article 37 of our Constitution provides for the right to peaceably picket, demonstrate, and present petitions to public authorities. And so the anticipation is that if people feel aggrieved that this bill is likely to curtail on their right to either earn an income or stuff like that, they are allowed to present these petitions in a manner that the Constitution provides for. I think right now we're also seeing, pockets of what you'd call tailor-made demonstrations now targeted to specific groups. You see the lawyers demonstrating against the Council on Legal Education, which is another regulatory authority. The engineers are demonstrating at the EBK, or the Engineers Board of Kenya, which is another
journalists who are
regulatory. So we don't know if journalists you'd be demonstrating against MCK, but we anticipate that there'll be a lot of heat on this bill.
For sure, and the submissions end today, the 15th of July, Monday, to ICT Authority. So I hope before it reaches 12 a.m., you have submitted your submissions about this bill and let your voice be heard, whichever area you practice in, software, cybersecurity, data analytics, and the like. But Victor, thank you so much for speaking to us about this and how it actually portends to affect the tech sector. Your last words as we close the conversation.
Yeah, the last word is for the ICT sector professionals, and I'm sure they're the main patrons of this show, to ensure that they engage with this bill.
Yeah.
Both at the ministry level, and should it get to Parliament, they should also ventilate themselves enough, because this bill, of course, has a lot of bearing on the future of ICT practice in Kenya.
For sure.
And as we aim to cement ourselves as a Silicon Savannah, it's good that we have regulations that inspire innovation, inspire development, and push people to develop a better tech space in Kenya. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much. And that's where we end it at for the first part of the show. We are going to take a short break. You're watching TECHOVER. Don't go too far. Welcome back. You're watching TECHOVER, the show that discusses all things technology. Time now to know who our founder this week is. Here is your segment, Startup of the Week. The last decade has seen an exponential emergence and growth of fintechs in Africa, with various solutions addressing mostly remittances. McKinsey reports that between 2020 and 2021, the number of tech startups in Africa tripled to around 5,200 companies. With many Africans working abroad and remote work becoming a norm, billions are sent to take care of subsistence and other development needs back home, or if you like it, black tax in plain black and white. However, last mile reach of funds until recently was a big challenge to most people who sent cash home, with recipients having to walk to the nearest towns to withdraw cash. This was Stone Atwine's biggest inspiration to start Eversend.
About 10 years ago, I lived here in Nairobi, and I'm originally from Uganda. And sending money back home to my grandma, black tax every month, you remit, was extremely difficult for me. And that's how I got into fintech. I used to send her money through Western Union or MoneyGram. And the annoying thing was that for her to receive that money, she had to take like a trip on a bus to get access to money. And I thought that was a horrible thing. So I set out to solve that problem. And that's when I built my first fintech platform, which was basically a platform that would take money out of my Visa card here in Nairobi, in Kenya, and deliver it to my grandma's MTN mobile money, which is like M-Pesa in Uganda, allowing her to cash out just 5 minutes outside her farm with these mobile money agents. So that's how I got into it.
And just like that, in 2013, he quit his job to start putting together Eversend. Eversend is a mobile-only banking alternative focused on the African market and African diaspora around the world. It offers intra-Africa cross-border and in-country money transfers from Africa to the rest of the world, and leverages a multi-currency e-wallet to provide other financial services like personal loans, travel insurance, and access to cryptocurrency.
It's tough, but it's been great. In the period we've been around, we've amassed up to 700,000 users. Yeah, we have about $550 million has passed through our platform, and we're still growing, so far so good.
Operating a fintech in Africa is no walk in the park. Apart from the stringent regulatory rules, tech infrastructure like rails and APIs remain a key challenge, as there are fewer common user facilities for budding fintechs to plug into.
I think it's one of the biggest problems, really, if you're building a platform like ours. You find that you have to build a lot of infrastructure compared to Europe, where you can go to banking as a service provider and plug in. They take care of regulations, they take care of SEPA and all these money movement things. In Africa, you really have to build your own platform, and we've spent a lot of years building a lot of infrastructure, plugging into M-Pesa, plugging into banks, MTN mobile money, Visa cards, all these kinds of things. And that's why we've decided now to offer this infrastructure that we've built also to other players who are coming in. So we do have B2B APIs that we sell to other fintechs that are trying to set up to make it easier for them.
Despite the challenges, there remains massive growth opportunity for fintechs in the continent. However, growth in financial services across Africa's 54 countries will not be uniform. While the lion's share of the value in the market, approximately 40% of revenues, is currently concentrated in South Africa, which has the most mature banking system in the continent, Ghana and Francophone West Africa are expected to show the fastest growth at 15% and 13% per annum respectively until 2025. Nigeria and Egypt follow, each with an expected growth of 12% per annum over the same period. Eversend hopes to jump onto this growth potential and scale up exponentially. And that's our startup of the week. Very well, Kenyans never cease to amaze me with their innovations. Let's finish off with a DIY and then we'll just end the show. Time now to keep you tech savvy. Tech tip of the week.
Hi guys, and welcome to this week's Tech Tip of the Week. Today we shall be discussing how you can improve your security online. The first one is regarding passwords. You should not create passwords which are easy to guess. Consider creating complex passwords which are not easy to guess, and you can do this by the help of password managers. There are so many password managers out there. A good example is the Google Password Manager, which you can just find within Google Chrome. This will create good passwords for you and also store them for you. The other tip is ensuring that you have two-step verification on all your social media accounts. Having this enabled will reduce the risk of your accounts being hacked, as once you try to log in and put in your password, it will always require another type of verification, such as sending a code to your phone or an email. And the last tip is avoiding connecting to public Wi-Fis. And in fact, do not access sensitive information when you're connected to public Wi-Fis. For example, do not access banking apps or any other sensitive information. If you really need to connect to public Wi-Fis, consider connecting to a VPN first, as this will keep you secure. I hope you learned something new. That's it for this week, and see you in the next one.
Very well. Once again, just encouraging you that the core of our conversation today was the ICT Authority Bill of 2024. It's gone through various stages since 2016 to date, and it's now been returned again to the public for public participation. So we hope that you submit your sentiments, your comments as a sector or as a company that practices tech actively, or as a young person out there, the people I interview who are startup founders and the like, and we hope that your voices are going to be heard. Today is the last day, the 15th of July 2024, so please make sure that you submit your reactions and your sentiments to the ICT Authority. And that's a good point to leave it at. My name is Brian Jojotino. Thank you so much for making time for us on TECHOVER. May tech live forever, and see you on the next one.